Welcome to the Sweet 16 edition of our OTT NCAA Tournament March Madness special. Some of us took some lumps in round one. Some people took more lumps than others. Yeah. I know I was wrong with my Michigan State prediction. I'm big enough to admit that. You know, not everything was great. Some people had some enjoyable opening weekends.
I definitely had an enjoyable weekend, and we have another.
Purdue mostly.
Purdue, that was terrible, yes. But my Texas Longhorns are moving on, and Matt Gard's Indiana Hoosiers are not moving on, and he wasn't on the panel this week, but he's here this week. So without further ado, Texas fight, and it's goodbye to A&M. Texas fight. Hey, Matt Gard. Hey, looking good. I like it.
Yeah, thanks. So this was a
Is
bet.
that Colt McCoy?
It's in the flesh.
Wow.
So Mark, this is a bet for those of you at home who don't know. We've had this going on for, I think, most of the season.
Like right before this, or right, like beginning of the season.
Yes, and we said, you know, if we'll make a bet between Indiana and Texas, whose team makes it further in the tournament. And not only did my men lose on Sunday night, but my women lost on Monday night, both to Miami, oddly enough. So now, since the Texas men are still in it, hook 'em horns, whatever y'all say down there in Texas land.
Howdy.
This hat doesn't totally fit my head either, but that's all right. Oh, I got the boots too.
Looking good. I appreciate you being a good sport, Matt. Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's like you said before. I think this is a good look.
I do that. I think you pull it off.
I just need a little bit bigger of a hat and a little bit smaller of shoes. So.
But yeah, appreciate it, Matt.
So burnt orange is your color, is what you're saying?
It looks better on me than regular orange, I'll say that. If I had made this same bet with Nate in his Oklahoma State Cowboys orange, I would not look good in that. I'll tell you that.
That's the fun part. I went to Michigan State. Mark went to Texas. Nate went to Oklahoma State. Their team's in the in the NIT still?
NIT Elite 8.
Look at this guy over here.
All you Sweet 16s over here. We got a game tonight against the powerhouse, the Mean Green, North Texas.
Congratulations. Yeah, I know you're looking forward to it.
They knocked out Purdue a few years ago.
And then, of course, as we just mentioned, Matt Gard went to Indiana. Yep. And that's kind of what makes the NCAA tournament fun. If your team can get in it, a lot of people go to football schools, and obviously you care more about that. But if you go to a basketball school, like I think all four of us would say, your school's really good at basketball, it makes this tournament so much more fun. And that's what made the first round kind of so chaotic, is there were tons of upsets. We mentioned one of them right off the bat. I got to get into this because on this very couch, we were talking about the first round, and we mentioned that if you're going to win in March, you got to have great guard play. Mm-hmm. And that was one of two reasons I said you might want to avoid Purdue. Mm-hmm. You don't want to pick Purdue to win it all or make a Final Four run. Some people on this panel didn't want to listen to that advice. Some people thought
you gave me the advice after I filled out my bracket.
Yeah, but you should have been smart enough ahead of time. Though. Yeah. Look at their last few years, man.
They were struggling going into the tournament. I'm stupid. It was a stupid decision by me. I can't believe it. I thought Zach Edey, the best player in the country, he's going to dominate the short team of Fairleigh Dickinson, who's got the shortest team in the tournament.
6'6", I think he's the tallest player. Yep.
Not only in the tournament, in the NCAA.
So that's Zach Edey's 10 inches taller than him, and they still couldn't win. I can't believe it.
I don't know. You were out of town. You were flying back and missed that game. But if you watch that game, like the second half of it, I tuned in, because anytime there's an upset, that's immediately where I'm going to go. And Purdue just was out of it in the second half. And I think what's his name? Tobin Anderson is the head coach at Fairleigh Dickinson. He's now, as we just talked about, already moved on to another gig. Good for him. But he had just the perfect game plan. Because, like you mentioned, they were the shortest team in all the NCAA. They got 7'4" Zach Edey, who's the best player in college basketball this year. Every time he touched the ball, Fairleigh Dickinson had a guy in his hip on both sides, and they're swatting the ball immediately. And that's how you take care of a guy that size when you don't have somebody that size. I thought it was just a well-coached game, and frankly, I thought Purdue they didn't look like their heart was in it.
100%.
They didn't. I don't think they at the end of that game. I don't think they really tried as hard as they could have.
No offense to my Texas friend here. I used to say that no one does less with more than Rick Barnes at Texas. That's how I used to look at how he handled the NCAA tournament. He had All-Americans like Kevin Durant and just, LaMarcus Aldridge. The list goes on and on. They never really could make a substantial run. So I always used to say, no one does less with more than Rick Barnes. That has now become, no one does losing like Matt Painter. No one does less with more in the NCAA tournament like Matt Painter. And Matt, I know you're an Indiana guy, you're not a Purdue guy, but you are a native son of the state of Indiana. So I'm sure if your Hoosiers aren't in it, you might be inclined to root for Purdue. How disappointing really is it to lose 3 straight NCAA tournaments to a 16 seed, I believe a 14 seed, and a 13?
15.
A 16, a 15, and a 13.
And then 2 years before that, a 12 seed in North Texas too. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at Purdue's fan base, I mean, I don't like to say a whole lot of nice things about Purdue, but their fans are as passionate as they come. You know, Indiana is tops, or basketball rather is tops in the state of Indiana. It is just a big letdown, and we were looking at the graphic the other day that Purdue is now the leader, for the lack of a better term, most wins ever in the NCAA tournament without winning the national championship, and I think that says a lot.
Correct.
And they've been in one Final Four, and it was in
1980. They went to another one in 1930.
Yeah, exactly. So.
But that was one of those, you know.
It doesn't really count.
Right, right. We had talked a little bit off camera about, you know, we started a bit of a debate. Is this the biggest upset of all time? And I would be inclined to say that it is, for no other reason than this Fairleigh Dickinson team was not supposed to be in this tournament. They did not win their conference tournament, so they didn't get the at-large bid as a result of that. But the winner of their conference tournament, Merrimack College, they're going in from a transition where they're going from Division II to Division I, and because the NCAA has these transition rules where you can't have a postseason in your first, year or two, they were not eligible. So Fairleigh Dickinson got in on a technicality and then beat a team that was number 1 for a good amount of the season.
I hear that. To me, 2 things. Number 1, UMBC over Virginia. Still a much bigger upset. Virginia won the national championship the very next season, which meant that talented team had national championship players on it when they lost to UMBC. I believe that was 2018. Also, I believe Coach Bennett at Virginia is a much better coach than Matt Painter.
I don't know about
this
that.
Purdue team had a 7'6" guy, 7'4" guy in Zach Edey. That's great, but nothing else. They got to be a 1 seed just because no one can figure out how to stop this big guy.
They won the Big Ten. You're saying he's a bad coach? He's not as good of a coach as Tony Bennett?
He's not as good as a coach as Tony.
Has more Final Fours.
I don't know.
Tony Bennett won a national championship. Matt Painter has it. Either way,
Yeah.
the only reason that I would disagree with you is I think that Virginia team that lost to a 16 seed was a better team than this Purdue team is. And then you can go back even further. While I know they're not a 16 seed, North Carolina State beating Phi Slamma Jamma in the NCAA tournament is one of the craziest upsets. That team had Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler on it, losing to a bunch of players that didn't really have that NBA success. So it is a phenomenal upset and one of the biggest ever. But even in this tournament, I think Purdue might have been the weakest 1 seed of the 4.
Easily.
And I'm not just saying that because they were the one that lost. I thought they weren't as good as Kansas or Alabama or Houston. And so, yeah, it's a huge takedown, and it's an all-time upset that we will be talking about forever. But I think, credit to FDU, but it wasn't the biggest in my opinion.
I mean, I think you got to look at teams that go on a run to say the bigger upsets, because I look at St. Peter's just last year, going to the Elite Eight, beating Kentucky in the first round, beating Purdue. It was an unbelievable run. Shaheen Holloway was the head coach of the Peacocks. Now he's at Seton Hall, his alma mater. So it's just really good stories. And then go back even a few years ago, Loyola Chicago with Sister Jean leading them. Went all the way to the Final Four. And that's what I think of Cinderellas, is just teams that went on runs. And I get it. It was a huge upset, and it's going to go down. I mean, it's only happened twice in the history of the game that a 16 seed is taken down a 1 seed. But I look at it as more as okay, is it just a fluke? Is it a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while? Or is it a team that continue to win and show success? So that's what I would view it as, but I do think it's also one of the greatest upsets ever.
Let's get into the bracket real quick because I don't want to stretch this out as long as the first one went. I want to talk about the East bracket where Purdue was the 1 overall seed. Everybody's heading to Madison Square Garden to play in the East Regional in New York City, which is a homecoming for Michigan State guard Tyson Walker, but also Kansas State's point guard hails from Harlem. So it's going to be 2 New York guys in the backcourt going on in that Sweet 16 game, which should be a really fun matchup because, again, for the 13th time, you got to have great guard play. Kansas State has it. Michigan State has it. They've made it to, I think this time is 15th Sweet 16s.
Yes, yeah.
And he's got more Sweet 16s than every program in the Big Ten except for 2. And that's Indiana and Michigan, I believe.
Yeah.
And that is a phenomenal stat. But, I don't know how you want to pick this one. I've already picked against Michigan State. I'm not going to change now. I think Kansas State gets Michigan State by 5. But that's just how I see this one.
I think, right off the bat, Michigan State's going to have to play better than they did against Marquette, and specifically from behind the three-point line.
Yeah.
They're not going to win this game if they only make 2 threes. Again, I wouldn't have. If you told me a week ago Michigan State was going to beat Marquette only making 2 in the entire game, I would say you're crazy, because that's their strength. That's where they're going to win. As you mentioned, good guards. Kansas State, really good team. I watched them throughout the season. I watched them manhandle Texas earlier in the season in Austin. I'm sorry to bring that up, but they did. They beat Texas on the road by like 20.
Yep.
This is a good team. This is a surprising team that was picked to finish last in the Big 12 before the season started. They have a first-year head coach, Jerome Tang. I think he's a phenomenal coach. He's done an amazing job.
Learned a lot from that national championship.
Exactly. He's done a really, really great job. I think it's always smart to hire long-term assistants because this guy knows what he's doing. But it's going to come down to that guard play, and Kansas State has a guard by the name of Marquise Noel.
Yep.
That dude went out for 27 against Kentucky. MSU's just going to have to score a lot of points, I think, to keep up with Kansas State. And we know their offense goes on these dry spells every now and then. I picked them to beat USC. I didn't have them beating Marquette. I think they're going to keep it close against Kansas State. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a blowout, but I got to take the Cats, and I'm going to ride with Jamal's pick of the Cats to the Final Four at this point as well.
Yep. I would not be surprised if the Spartans go on a run to the Final Four. I don't know if it's going to happen. Like I said last week, who knows what's going to happen? It's March Madness. Who knows? But the way that they were playing, the fact that they were able to win on a cold shooting night is huge, because they had the 4th highest three-point percentage in the country, the Spartans do. So if they're able to start hitting some shots, like Jamal mentioned, Tyson Walker is playing in his hometown. He's going to want to show out in front of all his family. If he shows out like he did in the round of 32 matchup against Marquette, why not? Why couldn't MSU defeat Kansas State? Like, I know they've had a great year. They got a great story. Keontae Walker, is that?
Keontae Johnson.
Keontae Johnson.
Yeah.
He's the guy who was in a coma for a few days after a heart problem at Florida, and now he's playing, doing really well, averaging 17 points per game. He's a really good story, but I think Michigan State is also a good story too, like we mentioned last week, with how they've dealt with everything that's happened on campus recently. So,
we saw Izzo break down after on the court after the last game. Said it's a long season, which it has been.
So it'd be great to see Michigan State continue on the run, and I got them winning. I think that they can go on a run, and I honestly, with now Purdue, the 1 seed gone, the 2 seed gone in this region, why could Michigan State not go on a run?
Matt, did you have Purdue out of the East, or is your team that you picked to come out of the East still alive? Or was
you had Duke.
I had Duke.
So so you saw Tennessee, able to take down Duke. Tennessee gets I won't say a cupcake game against Florida Atlantic, but I think that's a
that's going to be a
very
tough
winnable
matchup.
game.
It's a winnable game.
It's going to be a tough matchup.
But that's the other matchup in this. We talked about Michigan State, K-State. It's Tennessee, FAU in the other one.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't. There's kind of a feeling that you don't want to look at Florida Atlantic as a Cinderella in this story, because
they won 30 games.
They've won 30 games.
With that,
But at the same token, this is the first time they've made the NCAA tournament since 2002. Wow. So this is a big deal for their campus. This is a big deal for those kids. They're riding high. They're playing with enthusiasm, and it's kind of like one of those, does the stage get too big? We'll see. But I am excited about that matchup.
Yeah. Speaking about the stage getting too big, let's head to the South region to talk about a school that everyone knows by name because they're one of the best academic institutions in the country, but no one really looks at them as a sports powerhouse. That'd be the Princeton Tigers.
Hey, the Princeton offense. This is a basketball school.
Sure, going back to the early 1900s.
This is I'm telling you, man, the Ivy League has had some upsets in this tournament. We saw Tommy Amaker do it with Harvard.
Harvard's done it.
Obviously,
Cornell's done it.
Cornell had a really big upset.
Yale's done it a few times.
Yeah, Yale over Baylor a few years ago. Princeton, there's a lot to like about this team, and they've got a very winnable game in Creighton. That's a 15-6. Which, I like Creighton a lot. They obviously have the experience over Princeton because Creighton wins every year. They're a good mid-major squad. Dougie McBucket's father, McDermott, Greg McDermott, I think is his name. He's still
North
the head,
Dakota State legend.
He's still the head coach there, and he's great. But watch out for Princeton. I like him in that game. And I think I would ride with the Tigers to the Elite Eight.
I had Virginia and Arizona playing each other in the Elite Eight. Whoops, my bad. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Credit to Creighton for knocking off Baylor, and who thought that Virginia, would lose the way they did. So I admit I was wrong. But when you look at the rest of that, like he just said, Creighton's a good team. Alabama still looks to be the most dominant team, and I think you had thoughts going into the tournament about Alabama or injuries, or maybe that was Houston that I'm thinking of, but. Like the rest of the South is wide open other than Bama. It looks like, you still got to beat Bama.
I mean, to me,
Bama's coasting to the Final
Bama,
Four.
I think, is the clear-cut favorite to win the title at this point. In their first 2 games, they dominated.
But 2 number 1 seeds have already been knocked off, so who knows what's going to happen.
Again, I brought this up last week too, Alabama just absolutely cruised through the SEC tournament as well, which I thought the SEC was very strong this year. So I think they have to be the odds-on favorite of the teams that are left. But again, all the upsets we've had this year don't count out anybody else.
Well, the entire left side of the bracket, South and East, Bama's the highest rated seed. The second highest rated seed is Tennessee. So I think, like I said, the 4. So I think Bama is. I think they're my original champion. I'm still standing by it. I know you guys had your champions knocked out early.
Yeah.
Is anything changing for you guys? Are you sticking with? Or obviously something's changing.
Well, I had Kansas winning the title. Obviously that didn't happen. I think at this point I would probably take Bama as my champion. I did have them to the Final Four. What
about you?
I think I would take Alabama too, just for consistency's sake. I mean, they've been beating people up all year, and we love these Cinderella stories, but it's kind of hard to see somebody taking them out at this point.
My number 1 seed still alive. My national champ still alive. I got the Houston Cougars because I thought the prospect of them going back to Houston and winning a national championship in their own city would be a phenomenal sports story. Not being a Houston native, I know Mark's from Houston. He can talk to, I think, whether or not that'd be better than, let's say, the Texas Longhorns winning in Houston. I think those 2 teams would probably pack that stadium. The stadium's going to be packed regardless, but the crowds would be so raucous if either Texas or Houston got to play in the Final Four. And if you look at the Midwest region, very few upsets I think a lot of people pick. We're all looking at a 12-5 that didn't happen. Miami knocking off Indiana was one that we really didn't think was going to happen. It was a close game or 2 close teams, but I still think the Midwest runs through Houston, and that's even with Texas, Xavier, and Miami being there too.
Well, Texas,
not so fast. Not so fast.
Man.
I having seen that Miami team, I mean, they played Indiana tough. And Nate is going to give me guff about this, but one of the things that I see, 2 of the things is, you look at Houston, they're not healthy, they're not 100%. The other thing is they've played an American Athletic Conference schedule that is just, I mean, the American has had some good teams over the years. I don't think this is their best arsenal of teams. And so when
Houston went to the Final Four just a few
2 years ago, 21.
This year is not their best arsenal.
And the Final Four's in Houston. You don't think that adds a little extra motivation for the Cougars?
I mean, if you weren't motivated to get to the national championship without it being in your hometown, I don't know.
Well, and I know we've had this conversation off camera. I think when it comes to March Madness, you just throw that strength of schedule out the window. Because, I mean, the amount of times that we see, I mean, Fairleigh Dickinson played nobody.
Who did Princeton?
Quite literally. Princeton played nobody this year. So I've seen Houston play. They passed the eye test for me. It's always going to depend on if Marcus Sasser can play. I think Jarris Walker is a really great forward. He's going to do well. If Marcus Sasser plays, I think Houston. I've got Texas and Houston in my Elite Eight. I picked Texas originally. I'm still going to pick Texas to go to the Final Four. But Houston passed the eye test in every game I've seen them play, and like I said, you got to just throw conferences strength of schedule out the window. I mean, how many years?
Disagree.
How many years has the Big Ten, been considered the best conference in America?
The Big Ten has disappointed, but I will refer back to a stat that I texted you this past weekend, which is in the last 50 years, only 10 non-Power 5 teams have won. and most of them were named UConn or Villanova. So, if you're playing the odds, 20% chance that your national champion is from a non-Power 5 conference. Could it be Houston this year?
If you're playing the odds, Princeton doesn't win.
Yeah.
If you're playing the odds, Purdue doesn't lose in the first round.
Now, I will say, we're also not talking about the championship game right now.
Sure.
There's a lot of, I'm not saying Houston's going to win the title because I don't even have them in the Final Four.
We won't get sidetracked. You're both making great points.
But we want to talk about another game in this region, though.
Absolutely.
The Miami-Indiana
That
game?
Miami-Indiana game.
How did you feel about that game last night?
Not last night.
Or 2 nights ago.
There was
2
one
nights
last
ago.
night.
Miami had the momentum from the get-go. Indiana did come back and make it a close game at times, but I mean, you look at, they took their first lead, I think, well into the second half, and they just didn't have their best stuff. You hate it for a guy like Trace Jackson Davis, who really.
You want to see him play more tournament games.
Sure.
Absolutely. If you're going to give one person credit for Indiana getting back to where they should be in the NCAA tournament,
The second round.
Yeah, sure. But still, like during the Archie Miller era
Elite Eight.
and the tail end
I'll
of the
keep
Tom
saying it.
Crean era, like Indiana had lost their step. And
Absolutely.
so now that they've been back to the NCAA tournament 2 straight times, I think you give almost all the credit in the world to Trace Jackson Davis, and then of course Mike Woodson.
Well, I think without TJD or Mike Woodson there, you don't get Jalen Hood-Schifino, who's got a really bright future ahead of him at Indiana. So absolutely, I think there's a lot there.
if he doesn't go to the NBA,
as
been a lot of talk.
Yeah, we do have one more surprise for you, Matt.
Yeah, well,
Oh, no.
it's getting a little hot in here.
Yeah, so we got to take off the jackets. As lifelong Hurricanes fans, we wanted to just. Forgot about Marks.
We love our Hoosiers.
And our Canes.
We love you, Matt Gard.
Yeah,
I
wow.
will say,
Wow, you made shirts.
the Miami Indiana women's game last night, we were so hyped watching the game. We did not text you at all.
Yeah.
It was the most hyped I've ever been watching a game in a long time. It was like the Lions and Bears somehow met up in the Super Bowl, even though that's not possible.
That's what it was like. Electric in here,
That's what
man.
it was like. We were very passionate about the game. We didn't send you any texts, but we were very glad as lifelong Canes fans for the last 2 days.
Mark
It looks like you're an Indiana fan.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
I love
Huge Indiana fan.
Now, if you forget where that's from, there was, I believe, Adidas made a screw up on the order for the football jerseys a few years ago, and there was one player who he doesn't even play.
But that's the guy who was on camera,
He took to the
though.
field and he got his picture taken, and he was wearing a shirt that said Indiana, and the Purdue fans really had fun with that. Indiana, they can't even spell.
For sure. Well, now you can have fun with them losing to a 16.
So whenever Texas
Yes.
loses, I'm not looking forward to it because I know it's not going to be a great day for me. I know comeback is
As a lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan,
Let's throw up the U,
I just
baby.
know that
who's that
Miami
really-
owns the state of Indiana. So
What's that
did you
really
get
good
these
picture on the San Diego Padres? What's his first name? Darvish? What's his
Crank that Soldier Boy.
What's that song?
I like to listen to that
Crank
song.
that Soulja Boy.
the U.
The Soldier Boy?
Yeah, when you can rap it to it when you're in your car.
when you're right.
Okay, now we're off the rails.
We're off the rails. Congratulations to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, we got one more. We got one more region to get to.
To the West region. If you haven't been paying attention, if you're East Coasters like a lot of people, or you live in the Midwest, you might have been missing what's happening out West. Speaking of national powers, a lot of things were just happening in chalk like they were supposed to. UCLA still playing, Gonzaga still playing,
And
UConn still playing.
UCLA Gonzaga is the best game of this weekend.
Unbelievable Sweet 16 matchup.
Not even close.
No,
It's the best game.
by far the best game. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. Both of these teams have Final Four experience. I think UCLA still I know they still got Tiger Campbell, who was on the UCLA team. Sorry for Michigan State and Michigan. They beat them both
knocked off Michigan
on the
too,
way
yeah.
there to the Final Four. They still got Jaime Jaquez, I still think, is still on the team as well.
They've got these guys
experience.
that me and Matt always talk about. That guy's still in college.
Yeah, exactly.
They got a bunch of
And,
players.
They lose Clark for the year, though. That's the only
yes, and Gonzaga has that experience of Drew Timme. I watched a lot of the Gonzaga TCU game. That was a really fun back and forth battle. Drew Timme just took over in the second half, and TCU didn't have an answer for him. I'm taking Gonzaga in that game, and I'm taking the Zags to the Final Four out of this region.
Okay.
I think they're hot right now, and I like the experience.
Gonzaga was in my Final Four previously, so I'm sticking with them. I actually have my Elite Eight game in that region still available with UConn and Gonzaga. So I think UConn takes down Arkansas. UConn's obviously a really good tournament team, has been for a very long time. Gonzaga has been great. Drew Timme, like you mentioned. I like to go with the best players in the country, and I think sometimes that doesn't bode well for me, like it did with Zach Edey, did with DeAndre Ayton at Arizona a few years ago. But I still think he's been really good. Gonzaga's been to 8 straight Sweet 16s, I think I saw. So they've been red hot in the tournament for a long time. They've been to the Final Four, been to the national championship. What's stopping them from getting to the Final Four?
UConn, Arkansas, UCLA, Gonzaga. Got any thoughts whatsoever on the West region?
You know, we heard a lot of talk from you guys on this region, and we didn't hear about the Razorbacks hardly at all. You know, I think
I love the Hogs,
Eric
man.
Musselman is a
great coach.
A very exciting coach. There was a lot of talk this weekend about his celebration, popping the shirt off, and
Pablo.
I saw a bunch of people say, "Oh, that's not professional." Like, give me a break. It's unbridled joy, which is what you want at this point in the season. So, you know, but that said, I do think UConn has a great shot to beat them and then maybe advance. As far as Gonzaga and UCLA goes, Nate, I think you know where I stand on this. It's going to be Jaime Jaquez and the Conference of Champions. Throw it down, big man.
See, you talk about strength of schedule. Pac-12's garbage, man.
I don't know.
Arizona lost in the first round. You remember that?
Wait, were they your champion?
They were my champion. They were my champion. And by the way, my entire Final Four is out.
I've got 2
So
left.
take what he says with a grain of salt.
Oh, hold on. But I do have some advice for next year's bracket based on this region.
Go ahead, man.
This is with Kansas losing in the first round. This is the
Second round.
Sorry, first weekend.
Yeah.
With Kansas losing in the first weekend, this is the 6th consecutive year that the defending national champion has not made it out of the first weekend.
I like that stat.
So, when you find
Write
out
that
who
down.
the national champion is this year, put a note in your phone, tell Siri to remind you on March 1st of next year that team will lose in the first weekend,
Actually, I
either
like
the
that stat a lot.
first round or second round.
And you know what's going to happen. Next year, they're going to repeat as national champs.
Yeah.
Whoever wins the national championship this year is going all the way next year, thanks to Matt Gard.
Probably the U.
I had Kansas.
Throw it up for the U.
I had Kansas in the Final Four this year because I set that reminder in my phone last year, and I ignored the advice. I was like, no, Kansas is too good.
Yeah.
I do have one question for you guys. It's kind of off the rails a little bit. You mentioned Eric Musselman. One of my favorite parts of every single March Madness is after the championship game, one shining moment where they go through all the random clips, all the funny, emotional clips from March Madness. I think Musselman with his shirt off going crazy is one of them. I was wondering if you guys had anything that you had picked out that you think might be in that one shining moment. I've got another one. The Utah State cheerleader quivering her lip after.
Oh, that was brutal. Yeah, that was brutal.
Utah State lost in the first round.
Furman's three-pointer to beat Virginia off of that just unbelievably terrible turnover, one of the worst I've ever seen.
That's my answer.
That's going to be in there for sure.
Purdue losing is in there for sure. Or FDU winning specifically is going to be in one.
They should put the soundbite of FDU's coach before the game saying, the more I see Purdue, the more I think we're going to beat them.
Correct.
That's legendary.
I
I'm
would
like,
just
that's
put-
amazing.
There was a reporter from Indianapolis who posted a photo on Twitter of a big hole in the whiteboard in the Purdue locker room, and then she, take this with a grain of salt. She saw a little bit of scrapes on Zach Edey's arm, so maybe you could connect some dots there, maybe not, but it would be fun if that made the.
As an
That's a
Indiana
good
fan, you
question.
surely don't
Yes,
have any.
I would love it. I would love it.
And who's to say the best one shining moments are probably still being written? Still got the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, Final Four, National Championship. We've seen buzzer beaters to win national championships. Shout out to Villanova against North Carolina.
One of the greatest championship games I've ever
seen. Some of the greatest shots I've ever seen in NCAA basketball history. So hopefully we got a lot more great moments. That's how we look at the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. We'll come back. We'll talk about our Final Four matchups next week. Enjoy the NCAA tournament. Good luck if your team's still out there. Hopefully you guys are picking good picks.
Hook 'em horns, Matt.